When I initially taught principles of macroeconomics, I found that while students often enjoyed the individual topics we were covering, as a whole they sometimes felt frustrated by separate discussions of GDP, inflation, growth, investment, employment, monetary, and fiscal policy. They had trouble seeing how they underlyingly tied together. This year the class feels entirely different. We have a unifying theme, and students are able to place each new topic into an existing framework. This was achieved through playing a simple game of cornhole, which has the advantage that most graduating seniors probably played cornhole at one of their graduation parties. The activity takes about 10 minutes, and I've been able to leverage it through each subsequent unit. So you're probably asking, what does cornhole have to do with economics? Well, I use it to demonstrate three things. First, that real things matter. Second, that the way we keep track of real things is through a score or through prices. That the score itself is not real. But third, that the way we score, the way prices work, does influence our behavior. The activity works as follows. First, I ask the class if anyone would like to play a game of cornhole. After receiving 2 volunteers, I explain that each bag in the hole is worth 3 points. This is pretty standard, and that each bag on the board is worth 1. I provide the first player with 4 bags. They try from a distance of maybe 20 feet to score as many points as possible. I thank them for participating. I record their score on the board, as well as where their bags landed. And then I give the 4 bags to the second player. However, before the second player throws, I say, all right, the score has changed. Now, the way points will be awarded is that if you land a bag on the board, it is now worth 4 points rather than 1 point. But like the last game, if you go in the hole, it's worth 3 points, just like it was before. The second player proceeds to throw their 4 bags, and we again record their score on the board, as well as the actual result of where the bags landed. At this point, it's time to begin a discussion. And while it's not crucial to the activity, generally, the second player has the higher score. So when I ask the question, who had the higher score, it's an easy question for students to answer. I follow that up with, is a higher score representative of having more skill? And at this point, students are eager to respond, which is a great thing to have happen on the first day of class, because it sets the tone for the remainder of the class. Especially the student who played first feels that the game was unjust, that their scoring method was not fair because they had less points possible per bag on the board. And it's easy for students to see this. So then the next question I ask is, well, what might we do to compare Harry and Susan's real skill at bags? And it's not long before a student realizes that to compare the scores honestly, we need to use the same scoring system. We need to hold prices fixed. So then I say, suppose we only know the scoring system and the actual scores of the players, but not their actual bag placements. Now how might we compare skill across players? We can't actually convert every single individual price back into the price that it was originally. And so at this point, they start discussing concepts that are analogous to the GDP deflator or calculating a price index. Once I had a student say something like, well, we should find the average result that students have, that say 2.5 bags on the board and 0.5 bags in the hole, and then we should figure out what that score would be under both systems so that we can compare scores across different scoring methods. How does the changing of the way we score affect the way players play the game? So this one I use to get at the ideas of how monetary policy might affect things, and also the substitution bias for the CPI. At this point, players say, well, participants, students say, well, you made it 1 point compared to 3 points. The relative score of going on the board versus in the hole was 1/3. But in the second game, the relative score was 4/3. It was more valuable to score on the board. It changed the aim of the players. It changed what types of goods and services were being produced in the economy. And finally, I ask the question, what 2 components figure into the final score a player receives? And at this point, I'm looking for a specific answer. If the class doesn't come up with it, I provide it myself. First, I say that it is the goods and services which society provides. That's one thing that contributes to the score. In this game, it's the number of bags on the board and in the hole. Second, it's the way we score those goods and services, the way we price those goods and services that matters. So it's quantities and prices which determine the final score. Obviously, you can see that several concepts that will be repeatedly referred to throughout the course are brought up through this simple game. After finishing the game and discussion, I declare that 3 principles we learned from this game will provide a framework for the remainder of the course. First, real things matter. In this game, the real things were the skill of the players, which were identified through the number of bags they got on the board, their production of bags on the board, and their production of bags in the hole. Second, in the economy, we generally use prices to keep track of real things. However, these prices themselves are not real. They're only representative of things which are. And third, that prices do affect behavior. The way we score does influence the way we act. The surprising thing is that there hasn't been a topic we've covered in my principles course which can't somehow tie into this simple game. It's great for understanding that the difference in nominal GDP across years is caused by both changes in prices and in quantities, and that in order to isolate the real stuff, the quantities, we have to hold prices fixed. That naturally leads to an understanding of real GDP. The method for calculating CPI can be motivated by trying to figure out how to determine the inflation in the scoring method. The substitution bias is a natural outflow of causing the relative score of being on the board versus throwing in the hole to change. To motivate the study of growth, we discussed the goal of practicing bags. It's not valuable to compare one game where you score 1 point at a time and another game where you compare scoring thousands of points at a time. In order to get better at the bags, in order to actually improve productivity of society, you need to invest in human capital, practicing a whole lot of bags, or maybe come up with some machine that'll let you throw bags more accurately, investing in physical capital. Finally, when discussing monetary and fiscal policy, students intuitively understand that if you increase the scoring method and compare students' scores without informing students that the scoring method had changed, you might temporarily cause students to believe that they are much better at the game than they once thought. This may cause them to play more than they would have previously, but only until they realize that their perceived skill was actually a result of the scoring change. As teaching economists, we're interested in optimizing learning by comparing the marginal benefits to the marginal costs. It's hard to argue that an investment of 10 minutes of your first day of class is not vastly outweighed by having a unifying theme which can be referenced throughout the rest of the course and which students generally hold on to long after the course is over. So next time you teach principles of macroeconomics, just remember, it's all in the bags.